I still remember the sound of the pen scratching across the paper. That was the moment my life shattered. The lawyer, Mr. Dawson, adjusted his glasses and read my father's will aloud. My hands trembled on my lap. I'd been by his hospital bed every day for months, holding his hand while Lena, well, she was always too busy. When Dawson said my father's company, Carter and Company, was being left entirely to Lena Carter, I thought I'd misheard him. My name wasn't mentioned once. I looked across the table, and there she was, my twin, smiling politely, that fake, pitying curve of her lips that had haunted me since childhood. I felt my chest tighten. There must be some mistake, I whispered. But Lena leaned forward, placing her manicured hand over mine. Dad wanted what's best for the firm, she said sweetly. You were always too emotional. Everyone in the room saw me fall apart inside, but no one said a word. That was the last day I ever stepped foot inside Carter and Company. At least, as Ava Carter, I didn't. Not yet. The days after the will reading blurred together, grief mixed with disbelief. I packed my father's photos into boxes, each memory feeling heavier than the last. Lena moved into his office the same week he was buried. I saw the article online. Lena Carter takes over, Carter and Company. After father's passing. My stomach twisted. She didn't even wait. Mrs. Collins, Dad's old secretary, called me quietly one evening. Ava, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Lena changed some documents. Weeks before your father died. My heart sank. You mean she brought new papers to the hospital? Your father was too weak to read them. She said they were routine. He trusted her. My throat burned. I wanted to scream, but the words just wouldn't come. That night, I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, staring at my father's old watch, the one he always promised I'd inherit, when I ran the firm someday. I promised myself something, then. No tears, no confrontation, just patience. Because if Lena thought she'd won, she hadn't met the version of me that her betrayal had just created. A month later, I left New York. No goodbyes, no forwarding address. Just silence. Everyone thought I broke down. Maybe I did. But I needed to vanish to rebuild. I moved to a small town in Oregon, changed my number and started working at a local library. It was peaceful, quiet, and invisible. But every night, I studied. I taught myself business law, accounting, and corporate structures. Everything my father once tried to teach me, before Lena took over. I couldn't sleep until I could understand exactly how she did it. Then one afternoon, I got a message from Elliot Gray, an old friend from law school. I heard about what happened, Ava. If you ever need legal advice, call me. It felt like a spark in the dark. So I called him. When he picked up, his voice was warm but careful. Ava, if what Mrs. Collins said is true, what Lena did wasn't just unethical. It might be criminal. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of joy, but because I finally had a starting point. Weeks passed, and Elliot and I dug through every record we could find. Using his firm's access, we traced Lena's activities. She'd moved company funds into a private shell business, LC Enterprises. My initials stolen too. Elliot's tone was sharp one night. She's laundering company profits under your name, Ava. That's identity misuse. We can use that. I exhaled slowly, gripping my coffee mug until my knuckles turned white. Good. Let her keep building her empire on lies. It'll crumble faster when I pull the first thread. We spent nights building a quiet case, not for revenge, but for truth. Mrs. Collins sent me old emails and voice recordings between Lena and the hospital lawyer. Every piece felt like oxygen. Still, something inside me ached. She was my twin. The girl who used to braid my hair, steal my clothes, and laugh at the same jokes. But that Lena, the one I loved, had died long before our father did. What was left was someone who thought she'd buried me too. And maybe, for now, she had. 2 years later, the news cycle hit. Carter and Company expands nationwide under CEO Lena Carter. I stared at the headline from my small apartment window. I'd built a quiet new life, one where people didn't know me as Ava Carter, but as Ava Cole. Still, the name Lena made my stomach twist. Elliot called that night. "You ready?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. We had everything. Forged signatures, bank transfers, emails from the hospital lawyer. Enough to burn her legacy to ash. But it wasn't time yet. "Let her rise higher," I whispered. "The fall will hurt more." That was when I decided to return to New York. I walked past Carter and Company's shining building a week later, unnoticed. My reflection in the glass looked calm, collected, nothing like the girl who'd once cried in that boardroom. And when I saw a banner that read Annual Carter Foundation Gala, hosted by CEO Lena Carter, I smiled, because I already knew the invitation to that event would be her undoing. New York looked smaller than I remembered, but the air still carried the same sharp smell of ambition and deceit. I rented a quiet loft downtown under the name Ava Cole. No one recognized me. Not yet. I started frequenting the places Lena loved to be seen. Charity brunches, business panels, rooftop events. I watched her from afar. Same designer suits, same calculated smile. People adored her. They had no idea what hid beneath the polish. Mrs. Collins met me one evening in a small cafe near the firm. Her hands shook as she slid an envelope across the table. Inside were company memos. Proof that Lena had been using Carter and Company funds to invest in her private accounts. "This could ruin her," I whispered. Mrs. Collins looked up sadly. "Be careful, Ava. You're not the same girl anymore." She was right. The old Ava believed in fairness. The new Ava believed in balance. When I left the cafe, I saw Lena's car glide by. Tinted windows, sleek black paint. She didn't see me, but I saw her reflection in the glass, laughing with some investor. That laugh was my motivation now. A week later, I received an email titled Carter Foundation Gala, Formal Invitation. I almost laughed. The irony was perfect. She thought I was gone, a ghost of a failed sister, yet somehow my name had found its way onto the guest list. Elliot's doing, no doubt. I stared at the invitation for a long time before whispering, "So, the story begins." Elliot wasn't sure. "Are you ready to see her again?" "Ready?" I smiled faintly. I've been rehearsing that moment for 2 years. We planned every detail. I'd attend under my alias, Ava Cole, consultant. My face had changed subtly. I'd cut my hair short, adopted a new style. But Lena would know my eyes. She always did. The night of the gala, I stood before the mirror in a black gown, calm, controlled. When I arrived at the venue, the room shimmered with chandeliers and whispers. Then across the crowd, I saw her, Lena Carter. Her eyes met mine for a second, confusion flickering beneath her confidence. And that's when I smiled. Because recognition was always the first crack in a mask. Lena approached slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor like the countdown to something inevitable. "Ava," she breathed, her voice uncertain. I tilted my head, pretending surprise. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" Her lips parted slightly. "You look just like someone I used to know." "I get that a lot." She studied me, but guests started greeting her, pulling her away. Her confidence returned in seconds. Enjoy the event, she said smoothly, though her eyes lingered. I watched her walk off, the perfect CEO on display. But I saw the tremor in her hand when she reached for a glass of champagne. Throughout the night, I made quiet connections, journalists, board members, donors. I dropped subtle hints about Carter and Company's questionable investments. People listened. Seeds were planted. Later, Elliot texted me. You've got her attention. She asked her assistant to find out who you are. Perfect. By the end of the evening, I caught her watching me from across the room. The same look she'd given me the day she took everything. Except now, she didn't know if she was staring at her past or her future. The next morning, gossip blogs whispered about the mysterious woman at the Carter Gala. Some even speculated I was an investor. Lena hated not knowing things, especially when they involved control. Elliot called. She's already digging. Her assistant tried to pull your file. It led to a dead end. She's nervous. Good, I said softly. Meanwhile, Mrs. Collins discovered something shocking. Lena had been falsifying board reports, inflating numbers to cover her private withdrawals. Elliot smiled when he saw the data. This is more than scandal. This is fraud. We decided to leak a few hints anonymously to financial reporters. Within a week, whispers began circulating through Wall Street about unbalanced accounts at Carter and Company. But the real twist came when Lena herself called me. Her voice was guarded. Miss Cole, I've heard a lot about you. Would you like to discuss potential collaboration? I kept my tone calm. Of course, Ms. Carter. I'd be honored. After the call, I sat in silence for a long time. She didn't realize it yet, but she'd just invited me back into the empire she stole. Walking into Carter and Company again felt surreal. The same marble floors, same scent of expensive coffee, yet everything had changed. Lena greeted me in her glass-walled office, offering a professional smile. Ava Cole, she said, extending her hand. Welcome to Carter and Company. Her fingers were cold. We sat across from each other, two strangers sharing the same blood, but pretending otherwise. She introduced her team, explaining how she wanted fresh strategies for expansion. I nodded through it, studying every detail. The nervous twitch in her jaw, the slight tension in her voice. She didn't trust me, not yet. But she needed me. Her accounts were under quiet scrutiny, though she didn't know I was the one who triggered it. At the end of the meeting, she leaned back. You remind me so much of my sister, she said softly. I smiled faintly. She must have been quite something. Lena's expression flickered. Pain, guilt, then composure. Yes, she whispered. She was. When I left her office, I felt the past shift inside me. I was no longer the girl she buried. I was the storm she built herself. Working at Carter and Company, under my alias, felt like walking through a memory. Lena's new assistant, Nora, showed me to a workspace near the top floor, not far from where my father's office used to be. Every corner whispered of what I'd lost. Lena stopped by often, too often. I could see curiosity burning behind her polite smile. One afternoon she asked, Remind me again, Ava, where did you say you studied? Columbia. I lied easily, her brows lifted. My sister studied there too. I've heard she was brilliant, I replied, steady. She laughed softly, though it didn't reach her eyes. That same evening, I found myself alone in her office after hours. Elliot had secured me access through an insider contact. My hands shook slightly as I inserted a flash drive and copied confidential files, emails, bank transfers, false audits, everything. I paused by a framed photo on her desk, the two of us as teens smiling beside our father. For a second, guilt pricked my chest. Then I remembered her hand covering mine at the will reading. that soft, fake pity. And just like that, the guilt vanished. The next board meeting was a spectacle. Lena entered in her signature white suit, calm and radiant. I sat quietly at the back, taking notes. Elliot had warned me earlier that morning. She's under pressure. The auditors are asking questions she can't answer. The tension in the room was thick. One of the directors, Mr. Hanley, leaned forward. Ms. Carter, these numbers don't align with last quarter's filings. Care to explain? Lena's jaw tightened. Accounting error, she replied coolly. I watched the small twitch near her temple. The same one from childhood, whenever she lied. After the meeting, I overheard her whispering angrily to her CFO. Fix this. Now. But the problem was, she couldn't. Elliot had already sent anonymous tips to the press. That night, I stood by the office window, the city lights glowing beneath me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. Still, I knew this wasn't victory. It was only the tremor before the quake. And when the quake hit, she'd have no idea where it started. Because she'd invited it into her office herself. By the end of that month, it hit the news. Carter and Company. Faces, audit, after internal tip exposes accounting irregularities. Lena's face was everywhere, calm but strained in interviews, promising cooperation, denying wrongdoing. But I saw the cracks. The flawless mask she'd worn for years was slipping. Elliot and I watched the reports from his office. She'll try to spin it, he said. You ready for her next move? Always, I replied. That night, Lena called me personally again. Her tone was brittle. Miss Cole, I assume you've seen the media circus. I need loyal consultants right now. Can I count on you? I hesitated deliberately. Of course, I said softly. You can count on me. When I ended the call, Elliot gave me a look. You just promised your twin sister loyalty. I smiled faintly. I did. And for once, I'm keeping my word. Just not in the way she expects. Because loyalty, I'd learned, can also mean giving someone exactly what they deserve. The next board meeting was scheduled for Friday. The same day, Lena planned to present a falsified recovery report to reassure investors. But Elliot and I had something better. The real numbers. The ones she didn't want anyone to see. Mrs. Collins slipped me a final file the night before. An internal memo Lena had signed to move funds into LC Enterprises. Proof of embezzlement. I didn't sleep that night. My heart raced, not from fear but anticipation. When morning came, I dressed carefully. Black suit, minimal jewelry, controlled. Lena stood before the board, confident as ever. As you can see, she said, gesturing to the screen, our growth remains strong. Then Mr. Hanley interrupted. Actually, Ms. Carter, we'd like to review a few additional documents that recently came to our attention. Her smile faltered, and when I placed the folder on the table, her eyes widened in disbelief. Ava, she whispered, her voice breaking for the first time. I met her gaze calmly. You said I was too emotional. I learned to fix that. The room fell silent. The empire she stole now trembling beneath her feet. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. Lena's face drained of color as the documents spread across the table. Her voice trembled. These are forged. Mr. Hanley leaned forward. Then perhaps you'd like to explain why your private company shares an account with Carter and Company's reserves? Lena's eyes darted toward me, searching for something. Mercy, maybe. But mercy had been buried the day she took everything from me. The meeting ended abruptly. The board voted to suspend her pending investigation. Cameras were already waiting outside the building when she left. Elliot and I watched from across the street. She's finished, he said quietly. I nodded, but my chest felt strangely hollow. Not yet, I murmured. She still doesn't know it was me. That night, as I walked home through the cold air, a strange ache twisted in my chest. I'd dreamt of this moment for years, but standing in it felt heavier than victory. Because behind all the strategy, she was still my sister. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the real reckoning hadn't even started yet. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Lena. Her voice was raw, unfamiliar. "You did this, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "Don't play dumb, Ava," she hissed. "You think I wouldn't recognize you?" I knew it from the first night at the gala. Those eyes. You couldn't even hide that I stayed silent. "You ruined everything," she spat. "Dad's company. My reputation. Why? Because you couldn't stand being second." Something snapped inside me. "You took everything from me, Lena. My inheritance, my dignity, my future. You forged Dad's will. I'm not your victim anymore." She went quiet, then laughed softly. "You think the world will believe you over me? You're a ghost, Ava. I erased you once. I can do it again." The line went dead. I stood there, shaking. Not from fear, but from the realization that she wasn't going to fall quietly. And maybe, deep down, a part of me didn't want her to, because what's revenge without resistance? The next morning, my photo was on business news headlines. Anonymous insider leaks allegations against Lena Carter. Sister involved. Elliot's tone was tight. "She's leaking your identity, Ava. Someone inside gave her your records." I clenched my fists. So now she wants a public war. Reporters started circling my apartment, digging into my past. Every secret I'd buried was crawling back into daylight. Mrs. Collins called in tears. "Lena's turning the story against you, Ava. She's saying you forged the will to frame her." I wanted to scream. Of course she is. But Elliot stayed calm. Let her talk. Truth doesn't need a microphone. It needs timing. We decided to drop the final piece. A video from the hospital lawyer, secretly recorded by Mrs. Collins years ago. In it, Lena could be heard telling him to finalize the alternate will and keep quiet about her father's condition. Elliot uploaded it anonymously that night. By morning, every network had it. And for the first time, I didn't need to say a word. The truth was speaking loud enough. 2 nights later, Lena showed up at my apartment. No makeup, no entourage, just her in the rain. When I opened the door, she looked small. "You destroyed me," she whispered. I stared at her, unsure whether to pity her or hate her. "You destroyed yourself, Lena." I just stopped pretending not to notice tears streaked her cheeks. "You think this feels good? Watching me lose everything?" "No," I said softly. "It feels necessary." She laughed bitterly. "You always wanted to be Dad's favorite. Now you get to wear the halo while I burn." Her voice cracked on the last word. I sighed. "I didn't want you to burn. I wanted you to tell the truth." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence. Then she stepped closer. "You got what you wanted, Ava. But you'll never forget this face. Not when you close your eyes. Not when you try to move on." She turned and walked away into the dark. And though she was wrong about many things, she was right about that. The investigation ended quickly after that. The board voted unanimously to remove Lena as CEO. Her assets were frozen. Carter and Company appointed an interim head, Mr. Hanley. Reporters swarmed her every move, replaying her downfall like a slow-motion tragedy. Elliot asked me once, "Do you feel satisfied?" I thought about it, about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, the years I'd spent rebuilding myself from her betrayal. "Satisfaction isn't the word," I finally said. "It's closure." Still, a strange emptiness lingered. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had only proven that I could fight back. Mrs. Collins sent me one last letter. "Your father would be proud of the woman you became, Ava." But don't let his legacy chain you. Build your own. That night, I stood outside Carter and Company one last time. The logo gleamed faintly under the streetlight. Then I turned away, because for the first time in years, I didn't need to reclaim what I'd lost. I was finally free to create something new. 2 months passed. The world moved on from the Carter scandal faster than I expected. Headlines faded, reporters found new targets, and Lena vanished from the public eye. I'd started consulting quietly for small firms. Honest people, no glamour, no deceit. Life was slower, quieter, and for the first time, mine. One evening, Elliot stopped by my office. "You've done what you came for," he said gently. "You could leave New York now, start fresh." I nodded. "I will. Just not yet." There was still one loose thread. Lena. I hadn't seen her since that night in the rain. I didn't know if I wanted to. But closure doesn't come from silence. It comes from facing the echo one last time. So I did something I never planned to. I reached out. "Dinner," my message read. "Just us. No cameras, no games." She replied within minutes. "Tomorrow, the restaurant on 5th, 7 p.m. My stomach twisted as I stared at her reply. This was it. The final chapter neither of us could rewrite. The restaurant was dimly lit, soft jazz humming in the background. Lena arrived late, wearing black, the color of endings. She looked thinner, older, her confidence replaced by something quieter. "You look good," she said as she sat down. "So do you," I lied. For a while we just sat there, silent. Then she said softly, "I didn't mean to hurt you like that. I just wanted Dad to see me for once." I swallowed hard. "He already did. That's why you were never satisfied." Her eyes welled up. "I lost everything, Ava. The firm, my home, my reputation. Was that what you wanted?" "No," I whispered. "I wanted the truth. You built your world on lies, and eventually it collapsed. That wasn't me. That was you." She looked down, her voice trembling. "And now?" "Now I move on." The waiter brought the bill, but before I could reach for it, Lena slipped an envelope across the table. "For you," she said quietly. When I opened it later that night, my heart stopped. It was an invitation to her own downfall. Inside the envelope was a formal letter, bearing Carter and Company's seal. It was an official request for me to take over as chair of the Carter Foundation, the philanthropic arm she'd built from the firm's profits. Below the signature line, in Lena's handwriting, were 4 words: "For what you deserved." I sat there for a long time, stunned. It wasn't a trap, not this time. It was surrender. The one thing I never thought Lena capable of. Elliot smiled faintly when I showed him. "Maybe this is her apology," he said. I wasn't sure. Maybe it was guilt or exhaustion. But accepting it felt like rewriting the ending of our story, turning revenge into restoration. So I signed it. Not for power, but for peace. And when the announcement hit the press, headlines read, "Ava Carter returns," to lead the foundation built on her family's name. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm, because for once, my name wasn't tied to destruction. It was tied to rebuilding what was left of both of us. Weeks later, I visited Lena's new home. A modest apartment on the edge of the city. No luxury, no staff, just quiet. She opened the door slowly, surprised but not hostile. "You came?" "I had to," I said softly. "The foundation's up and running. I thought you might want to see what it's becoming." She gave a faint smile. "I see the news." "You're doing good work, Ava." "We are," I corrected gently. "It still bears your name, too." Her eyes softened. "You didn't have to keep it." "I did," I said, "because erasing you won't heal me." For a moment we stood there in silence. The weight between us. Years of rivalry, pain, betrayal, finally began to lift. Before I left, she said quietly, "Dad would have been proud of you." I turned at the door. He would have been proud of both of us. We just lost our way. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Goodbye, Ava." "Not goodbye," I whispered. "Just peace." And for the first time, she smiled without pretending. Spring came quietly. The Carter Foundation flourished, funding projects that helped small businesses. Something Dad always dreamed of. Sometimes I'd pass the old Carter and Company building. The logo still gleamed under the city sun. But it no longer made me ache. It reminded me of how far I'd come. Elliot visited often, teasing that I was finally smiling for real. Maybe I was. One morning, as I sorted through foundation letters, I found one sealed envelope without a return address. Inside it said, "Thank you for letting me fall. It's the only way I learned to stand again. Lena." I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. That was when I realized revenge hadn't been the point. It was the path that led both of us back to ourselves. As I stepped outside into the bright city morning, I whispered to the wind. She thought I'd moved on, and she was right. But not before the invitation to her own downfall arrived. And for the first time, those words didn't feel like vengeance. They felt like freedom.